Wednesday's Wall Street Journal features Archbishop Timothy Broglio telling how bishops are suing the Biden White House. The article praises the 2022 employment law protecting pregnant workers, but explains how their lawsuit seeks to reverse President Biden's distorted interpretation of the law mandating employer assistance in abortion. This is Life News Radio. Persecution around the world has manifested itself through the centuries, but it is worse today than ever before. Aid to the church in need and its donors have been there to help since 1947, never abandoning the church. Will you stand up for your faith and accompany our brothers and sisters on their spiritual journey? Visit churchinneed.org. churchinneed.org. The president and director of medical affairs for the Charlotte Lozier Institute has been appointed to the Texas State Committee that compiles data on pregnancy-related mortality. Delivering children, research, and policymaking are highlights of Texas OBGYN Dr. Ingrid Scope's 30-year career. The abortion industry and other eugenics advocates are busy at the World Health Organization meetings in Switzerland. Among other proposals, reproductive health was touted as a solution to high maternal mortality. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Experience the thunderous excitement of Niagara Falls as we celebrate a major milestone. On August 24th at the Niagara Falls Convention Center, the Station of the Cross will be celebrating our 25-year anniversary. Become a part of history while being captivated by an all-star lineup of renowned speakers. Raymond Arroyo, Candace Owens, Bishop Joseph Strickland, Mother Miriam, Father Robert McTagg, Jim Havens, and Joe McLean. After soaking in their powerful messages at the general event, get to know them on a personal level at the VIP Gala Dinner. Take advantage of this unique opportunity to mingle with our guest speakers while enjoying hors d'oeuvres and cocktails and a wonderful sit-down dinner. Make it a vacation at one of the fabulous hotels within walking distance of Niagara Falls. But act fast. Tickets are limited. Register today at thestationofthecross.com.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network presents Saints and Seasons. On June 3rd, we celebrate the feast of Saint Clotilda, Queen and Widow. Clotilda was born around the year of our Lord 474, the daughter of the King of Burgundy and a devout Catholic, despite heavy Arian influence at court. Not long after her father's death, Clotilda was given in marriage to the pagan Clovis, future king of the Franks. Clovis is considered the founder of the Merovingian dynasty and the first king of what would eventually become France, uniting the Frankish tribes under a single rule. Clotilda immediately began to evangelize her husband and succeeded in having their children baptized. Finally, in the heat of battle against the Alemanni, Clovis vowed to convert if he were granted victory. He triumphed and held true to his vow. Bishop Saint Remigius baptized Clovis at Reims, where later French kings would traditionally be crowned and anointed with the chrism miraculously brought by a dove for the baptism of Clovis. Clotilda suffered greatly after her husband's eventual death, as family intrigues devolved into warfare and murder. She retired to live in a monastery at Tours, near the tomb of St. Martin, and died there in the mid-6th century after several decades of prayer and good works, having played her essential part in the conversion of the eldest daughter of the Church. Also honored on this day are the Ugandan martyrs, St. Paula, St. Kevin of Glendalough, St. Juan Grande, and many other martyrs, confessors, and holy virgins. For more about the saints and seasons of the Catholic Church, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons.
This is Joe McLean, and you're listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of the truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean, and it's great to be on with you. How was the weekend? Prayerfully, it was amazing. Hopefully, you had a great opportunity to get through that honey-do list. I know I did. Hey, listen, I fixed the shower. I had to pull the whole thing apart and pulled the cartridge out. It took everything I had, but I got her done. You know what I'm saying? So the honey-do list checked off. I'm good for at least another 6 months. Hey, on the program today, we don't have 6 months to talk about the Trump conviction because July 11th is going to be here before you know it. Will he go to jail is one of the big questions on our mind. But a lot of people are asking the question, is this signaling a dark day in history? Is the DOJ so corrupt at this point that it's only the preferred weapon of choice to punish one's enemies? And if Trump gets elected, will he do the same? Will the DOJ even listen to him? There's lots of questions to ask. We're going to be asking these questions to Mike Koeniger, friend of the show, at 14 past the hour. Plus, we're going to have on the program Michael Ippolito and Nicholas Swanson on the team. They wrote an article over Crisis magazine, enshrining abortion via the IVF. So while the GOP leading candidate has been convicted of 34 counts on a felony charge, which we'll talk more about, the conservatives, what are they conserving exactly? They're wanting IVF to become law in the land. They're not really protecting life at all. We're going to have Michael and Nicholas weigh in on all of that at 30 past the hour. So do join us if you can. We will, of course, share the show notes with you. Everything we discussed, the links over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. But don't forget, coming up August the 24th in Niagara Falls is our 25th year anniversary celebration conference and VIP dinner. You could come and hang out with us, and we would love to have you there. Bishop Strickland's going to be there. Candace Owens, Raymond Arroyo, Father Mateg, Jim Havens, Mother Miriam, myself, producer Jake, and the whole team. Go to thestationofthecross.com, click that banner, get registered today, and we'll see you in Niagara Falls. Let's pray. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and now your saint of the day.
Queen Saint Clotilda, pray for us. Clotilda was born around the year of our Lord 474, the daughter of the King of Burgundy, and a devout Catholic, despite heavy Arian influence at court. Not long after her father's death, Clotilda was given in marriage to the pagan Clovis, future king of the Franks. Clovis is considered the founder of the Merovingian dynasty and the first king of what would eventually become France, uniting the Frankish tribes under a single rule. Clotilda immediately began to evangelize her husband and succeeded in having their children baptized. Finally, in the heat of battle against the Alemanni, Clovis vowed to convert if he were granted victory. He triumphed and held true to his vow. Bishop St. Remigius baptized Clovis at Rheims, where later French kings would traditionally be crowned and anointed with the chrism miraculously brought by a dove for the baptism of Clovis. Mass baptisms of the Franks followed. Clotilda suffered greatly after her husband's eventual death, as family intrigues devolved into warfare and murder. She retired to live in a monastery at Tours, near the tomb of St. Martin, and died there in the mid-6th century after several decades of prayer and good works, having played her essential part in the conversion of the eldest daughter of the Church. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons. Queen Saint Clotilda, pray for us.
And now, your headline news. Epoch Times reports Mexico's Sheinbaum could win by a landslide, set to be the first female president. Mexico's ruling party declared Claudia Sheinbaum the winner of the presidential election by a large margin after polls closed Sunday, putting her on a course to be the country's first female president. Pollsters forecast Ms. Sheinbaum winning by a landslide 56% of the vote, according to their exit polls, with the opposition candidate at 30%. Sunday's vote was marred, though, by killing 2 people at the polling stations in Puebla State, adding multiple attacks that have made Mexico's largest ever elections also the most violent in the modern history. Some 38 candidates were killed, the violence stoking concerns about the threat of warring drug cartels to democracy. Ground News reports pilot rescues 3 stranded teenagers after spotting help written in the sand. 3 teenagers were rescued from a remote area in Western Australia's mid-west coast after writing a distress message leading to their location by 2 pilots. Officers found the teenagers unharmed after being stranded for 6 hours without recovery gear or an emergency beacon, reuniting them with family and leaving their vehicle for later recovery. Breitbart reports oil producers led by Saudis extended supply cuts amid slack prices. The OPEC alliance, made up of members of the producers' cartel and allied countries, including Russia, extended 3 different sets of cuts totaling 5.8 million barrels a day. International benchmark Brent has loitered at the $81 to $83 per barrel range for the past month. Even the war in Gaza and attacks on shipping in the Red Sea by Houthi rebels in Yemen have not pushed prices up toward the $100 per barrel level last seen in September 2022. Analysts say the cuts could push oil prices higher in coming months, but much depends on the demand for the oil going forward. U.S. motorists have benefited from weaker oil prices. Gasoline prices have been steady, recently averaging $3.56 per gallon last week, a penny less than a year ago. That's down from the over $5 per gallon back in June of 2022. Remember that? Yeah, that's great, wasn't it? And those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Mark chapter 12, verses 1 through 12. Jesus began to speak to the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders in parables. A man planted a vineyard, put a hedge around it, and dug a wine press and built a tower. Then he leased it to tenant farmers and left on a journey. At the proper time, he sent a servant to the tenants to obtain from them the produce of the vineyard. But they seized him, beat him, and sent him away empty-handed. Again, he sent them another servant, and that one they beat over the head and treated shamefully. He sent yet another whom they killed. So too many others. Some they beat, others they killed. He had one other to send, a beloved son. He sent him to them last of all, thinking, they will respect my son. But those tenants said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they seized him and killed him and threw him out of the vineyard. What then will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come, put the tenants to death, and give the vineyard to others. Have you not read the scripture passage? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. By the Lord has this been done, and it is wonderful in our eyes. They were seeking to arrest him, but they feared the crowd, for they realized that he had addressed the parable to them. So they left him and went away. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Oof. He spoke to the chief priests and the rulers of the people. He looked them in the eye when he said this, and they realized he was speaking to them. He was going to take their authority, their priesthood away from them and give it to others. Thus, the Catholic Church, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, is the new Israel. Let that sink in. Just ruminate on that for a moment. Haydock's commentary, writing back in the 19th century, says, under these figurative modes of speech or parables, Jesus Christ began to trace out for their reflection a true portraiture of their ingratitude and of the divine vengeance. By this, we are to understand God the Father, whose vineyard was the house of Israel, which he guarded by angels. The place dug for the wine vat is the law, the tower, the temple, and Moses, the prophets, and the priests, whom the Jews afflicted and persecuted, are the husbandmen or servants. according to St. Jerome. It goes on. The same parable was employed by Isaiah, where speaking of Christ, he says, "My beloved had a vineyard, and he fenced it in." Trinius, according to Trinius, anyway, he goes on, "He went into a far country, not by charge of place, or not by change of place, for he is everywhere, but by leaving the workmen the power of free will, either to work or not to work. In the same manner as a man in a far country cannot oversee his servants at home, but leaves them to themselves." This is according to Venerable Bede. In other words, he's here, he's with us, but he's given you free will and a choice. You can take your free will and do what you're supposed to, which is to choose to do the right thing, or you can choose to do the wrong thing. The choice is yours, but the consequences will be enjoyed by you, whether they are good or bad. You get what you deserve. We make our bed, and we got to lie in it. It goes on. This parable is thus morally explained. Jesus Christ planted a church with his own blood, surrounded it with evangelical doctrine, as with the hedge, dug a place for the wine vat by the abundance of spiritual graces, which he has prepared for his church, built a tower by appointing his angel to guard each individual Christian, who are the husbandmen to whom he has let it out. Will we be like those that saw the Son of Man coming, the Son of the Lord, and take him outside of this vineyard and there put him to death? Or will we embrace him as the Son of God? The choice is yours. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is Jim Havens, host of The Simple Truth. Thank you for supporting our recent Spring On-Air Appeal. We are so grateful to the many donors who have stepped up to help us make significant progress toward our Spring Appeal goal. If the Station of the Cross has been a blessing to you, please help us to close the gap by making a donation today. To support our mission, call 1-877-711-8500 during normal business hours. You can donate online at thestationofthecross.com, use the donation page of iCatholic Radio or the iCatholic Music app, or return the envelope from our recent mailing. It is very important that we hit our goals so we can continue to proclaim the truth and beauty of our Catholic faith. Thank you for being a listener and for your generous support. God bless you.
Please join us in a prayer to our guardian angel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O holy guardian angel, take care of our soul and body. Enlighten our mind that we may know the Lord better and love him with all our heart. Help us in our prayers so that we may not give in to distractions. Assist us with your advice so that we may see the good and carry it out with generosity. Defend us from the insidious snares of the enemy and sustain us in temptations that we may always be victorious. Remedy our coldness in our worship of the Lord. Cease not to protect us until you have brought us into paradise, where we will praise our good God together for all eternity. Amen.
Be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. It's good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Coming up at 30 past the hour, Michael Ippolito and Nicholas Swanson are going to be our guests. They co-wrote an article over at crisismagazine.com called Enshrining Abortion via IVF. I think it's just interesting, isn't it? The leading GOP candidate may go to jail, and the so-called conservatives are tossing conservatism out the window. We'll get Michael and Nicholas to comment on that and give us their take. Why is IVF so wrong? And why is Senator Ted Cruz, of all people, embracing it? More on that coming up at 30 past the hour. But of course, we all have heard the stories. We've seen the headlines and the social media craziness over the course of the weekend due to the fallout of Donald Trump being convicted of 34 felony counts. And I've invited our good friend of the program, Michael Koeniger, to be on the show to weigh in on this. Mike, good morning to you. Thanks for your time today.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Pleased to be here. How was your weekend?
Glory be to God. I got something done. I checked an item off the honey-do list. I feel pretty good about it. I feel pretty much like the husband of the year. I should get the award, I think.
Oh, no. I won that this weekend because I got the watering system set up for the garden, so no one has to go out there with a hose. So I win.
We are studs, Mike, you and I, okay?
Of course.
We're old, but man, do we feel good about it. Praise be to Jesus.
That's right. That's right, brother.
These headlines, dark day for America. I mean, you got to ask the question, is it this bad? I mean, when I think about, like, say, the corruption of the Department of Justice, I'm like, it's called a Tuesday. What are we talking about here? It seems like, well, like, we all knew that people are biased. We all know that one tries to get exact vengeance on one's enemy. That's not new. So is this as bad as we purported to be?
Well, that depends, Joe, and it depends, unfortunately, on which side of the political spectrum you fall on. And as a Catholic man, where do we fall on that spectrum? Because we're real conservatives, conserving something that we believe in, but the side that calls themselves the conservatives is not conserving anything, as you've pointed out repeatedly. The question becomes, is it a dark day? For half of America, absolutely, it's a dark day. There's no doubt. For the other half of America, they've been vindicated. He's a crook. They know he's a crook. It's now proven that he's a crook, and now they can campaign on the fact that he's a convicted criminal. And that rhetoric we're going to hear from now until November ad nauseum. It'll be awful. And I went to a site called All Sides, and it tries to show you the right side, the left side, and the middle side of the discussion. And on all sides, I read a lot of those left-leaning articles, and they think it's a great day for America. The justice system works, et cetera, et cetera. And what's interesting about that to me, Joe, is Brent and I talked about, I was guest hosting for you when this trial started, and Brent and I talked about this trial first week. And there were so many problems with the way this was prosecuted, where the statute of limitations had run out. Trump has never been convicted of a felony, so it was a misdemeanor charge. It was a bookkeeping error. And, of course, they threw all that out the window and went ahead and prosecuted and won. And then real quickly, Joe, the last comment I have that just comes right to the top of my head, I read a few articles by legal scholars who said this was just a poor defense. Instead of going after the facts of the case and destroying the facts of the case, they went after Stormy Daniels and that whole story.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to prove that Trump had not had a relationship with that woman. And while that's important to him as a moral character, it was unimportant in light of the case. And I found that to be very interesting.
You know what I find interesting is, in order to get past that statute of limitations, Alvin Bragg had to take as you say, the misdemeanor charge and creatively bump that up to felony, which gave him the opportunity to bring that to court past the statute of limitations. So the business record issue is like a non-issue, really. Like, nobody gets really convicted of that, truly. Right. So paying an attorney, whether it's to keep a person quiet or not, is beside the point. That's not really what he's been convicted of here. Alvin Bragg needed to find a creative solution. So what does he do? He says he changed these business records. He falsified business records in order to cover up a second crime. What's the second crime? It's not Stormy Daniels. The second crime is election interfering in the 2016 election. So isn't it ironic that Donald Trump gets convicted of rigging an election? I mean, of all people, to be accused of rigging an election, I just find that so ironic. It's just, if it wasn't more serious, it would be laughable. Like, seriously, like, this is the country we live in. They get him on election interfering at the end of the day. So here's the question. Do you think we're going to see Donald Trump in a jumpsuit come July the 11th?
I don't think he's going to jail, Joe. I think that he'll have his lawyers hit the courts hard. He'll probably put in an appeal directly to the Supreme Court. I don't think he's going to end up in jail. I think everyone realizes this was a bookkeeping error, and while they connected it to a so-called felony that he was never convicted of, I think it'll go away. But honestly, Joe, I don't think it matters. I think that if Trump's campaign does the right thing, this is going to make him more likable and not less. Guys like me, I've been very unhappy with Trump. He's pro-choice. He believes in abortion, the murder of babies. He's all for IVF. He's all for homosexual marriage. He's all for issues that you and I are very close to our heart. But this makes me kind of want to vote for him too, Joe, because he's a victim, right? He's the guy that the machine went after.
It would seem you're not alone, because more women voters, younger voters, more minority voters than ever before seem to be coming out of the woodwork to sound their support. In fact, Donald Trump received a $100 million donation, not from his longtime friend and billionaire, but now Democrat billionaires are considering coming out in support of Donald Trump. I was seeing some articles coming out from over the weekend. Bill Ackman, this was from the Daily Wire reporting this, longtime Democrat likely to back Trump over Biden. I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now, is he doesn't just have the base or the MAGA nation. Now he's seeing that middle ground. However, the polls seem to be conflicted here. They're kind of, the polls that have come out since the conviction last week seem to point the countries like in a split 50-50 when it comes to independent voters. Half are saying they think he should go to jail. Half are saying that he should jump out of the election. But the other half is saying, no, he should stay the course. And we're seeing a bump from the middle ground voters towards Donald Trump. Is that a signal of what we can expect come November? Do you think so?
I think you're right. The battleground is for those middle voters. It certainly is. And does this help Trump? We will see. Here's the thing that I wanted to point out, Joe, before we finish up the segment, is that I read a study from a Harvard professor who did the research on why Trump won in 2016. Trump carried the same Republican base in 2016 that was carried in 2012 and 2008 by McCain and those guys and Romney. Where Trump won the election was he polled better with Hispanics, African Americans, and other minority groups. And that was why he won in 2016. So if he can pull that contingent of voters back into his camp, and it doesn't even have to be over half. If he can pull 40 or 35% of those voters back into his camp, he has a real shot here, because those are voters that are in key areas in states where there are a lot of votes to be won. In Georgia, for example, in Pennsylvania, where he lost in the last election, in perhaps even in Arizona, where he lost in the last election. So whether he rightfully lost those elections or not is immaterial. If he can put enough votes in the ballot box that they can't steal the election from him, then yes, he's very electable, and he could win in November 5th. He could win.
Worst case scenario, he goes to jail. We see him in the orange jumpsuit. There's been a bill put forward in Congress to remove his Secret Service protection. And some are even characterizing that as like a sort of like a death sentence. If he's put into the big house with no protection in the general population, they're even using the term, he could be Epsteined here. Do you think that that's a likely outcome? I certainly don't, but what do you think?
I don't think it's an outcome. I think the Secret Service will be there. But, Don Trump Jr. broadcast right after the conviction, and I actually listened to him on Rumble. And Don Trump Jr. made the comment that this is chilling to him, because this is his dad he's talking about, right? And so if his dad gets murdered, this is a bad thing. And yes, I think it's concerning, but I don't think it's likely. But more importantly, to me, is what are the impacts on our nation? Have we truly become a banana republic where we can twist the law, make the law whatever we want to go after someone we don't like? And by the way, all the folks who are calling, wait till Biden gets it, if we do it to Biden, it's just as bad as what they did to Trump. It really is. And we need to be very careful here and make sure that we're in the right. And that's my big concern, Joe, is do we get him back by going after Biden? And then it becomes cycle after cycle of the bad guy being whoever the party is that's on the outside.
If his first 4 years will be anything like the next 4 years, should he be elected back to the White House, I can't imagine the DOJ cooperating with him enough to punish his detractors. Do you?
No, they're not going to cooperate with him. And it's we're finding out now that the military, the senior officers in the military were refusing to allow him to do what he was supposed to do as his job. They were hiding the truth from him, all those things. And so, yeah, Joe, I don't think the DOJ is going to cooperate. I think the FBI is going to be a whatever you want to call it. They're going to be an righteous opposition to Trump throughout his presidency. I don't see. honestly, he's going to try to get things through. I don't think he's going to get it done as president. And I don't mean to be negative. I just think they're going to hamstring him.
Okay, the other thing I was going to ask you before we run out of time is, do you think Americans can even trust the legal system at this point? I know, again, it's not new that there's a manipulation or a twisting of the DOJ. That's happened many times in our country's history. But it feels like, especially looking at the polls, more and more Americans simply don't trust the system. So can we ever trust the system again is the question. What would it take to trust the system again? I'm not sure. I think that ship has sailed. What do you say?
I think it's long gone, Joe. I've been calling for criminal justice reform for at least 20 years. I think the bellwethers that we see in our communities, particularly in the black community, have been telling us for a long time that this is a problem. And I'm not opposed to locking up criminals. Please don't misunderstand me. But we have the largest prison population in the world. There's something wrong with the criminal justice system in that regard. And so we really need to look at it. So I think it's like the public schools. Can they be redeemed? Probably not. It would take a miracle. If Jesus comes back, absolutely. But other than that, I don't see it happening, brother. It's not going to happen.
What about the precedent? What about the precedent of, I don't think they proved that Donald Trump gave instructions to his bookkeeper to falsify those documents. If they paid an attorney, that's called an attorney fee. That's a legal fee. Whether or not that money was used to buy groceries, buy something off Amazon, or pay off Stormy Daniels is neither here nor there. You paid an attorney, it's a legal fee. That was sort of the argument. I don't think they proved Donald Trump knew or gave instructions to the bookie to change those records. So if the CEO is always going to go to jail for the crimes of staff members, let's just say, should the President of the United States go to jail for the crimes of CIA agents who execute people or torture them in foreign countries? You see what I'm saying, where I'm going with that? No. It seems like a dangerous precedent that once you open that up, you can't get it back in the bag after. So dangerous days ahead. I think a lot of people are thinking that. Mike Koeniger, maybe you can come hang back out with us in the after show, but thanks for being on with us today. And we got a straw poll going over on YouTube. Should Donald Trump drop out after the conviction? 0% say yes, 92% say no, and 8% say not sure. If you want to be a part of that, go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT, find the live video player and the YouTube link right there. We'll be right back. More is coming up next.
Hello, this is Father Jim Netto with the Diocese of Portland, Maine. In Krakow, Poland on the 2nd of June, 1938, the Lord Jesus himself directed a young Polish Sister of Mercy on a 3-day retreat. Sister Faustina painstakingly recorded Christ's instructions in her diary, that is, a mystical manual on prayer and divine mercy. These instructions became Faustina's weapon in fighting the good fight. Jesus began, "My daughter, I want to teach you about spiritual warfare." Secret number 24. Know that you are on a great stage where all heaven and earth are watching you. This secret reminds us that we are all on a great stage where heaven and earth are watching. What message is our life giving? What radiates from us? Shades of light, darkness, or gray? The way we live attracts more light or more darkness. If the devil does not succeed in pulling us into darkness, he tries to keep us in the category of the lukewarm, which is not pleasing to God. For a lukewarm soul is not yet quite dead in the eyes of God, because the faith and the hope and the charity that are its spiritual life are not altogether extinct. But it's a faith without zeal. It is a hope without resolution. It is a charity without passion. The lukewarm soul is like a turtle. It moves only by dragging itself along the ground. You can see it getting from place to place with great difficulty. Lord God, your word tells us that if a soul remains lukewarm for a lifetime, you will spit it out of your mouth. Save us from that fate. Breathe the spark within us to make it a blazing fire of love for you.
be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain, and here are your headline news. Epoch Times reports the FCC ends internet subsidy program for 23 million Americans. The Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP, was established in December of 2020 and provided eligible households with a discount of up to $30 per month for the internet subscriptions. Since its inception, ACP has enrolled over 23 million subscribers across the United States. Congress had provided $14.2 billion in funding for the program in 2021, which ran out in May. On May 31st, FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel announced that the agency would officially end ACP on June the 1st due to lack of additional funding. The New York Post is reporting Biden admin offers mass amnesty to migrants as it quietly terminates hundreds of thousands of asylum cases. Data shows that since 2022, more than 350,000 asylum cases filed by migrants have been closed by the U.S. government if the applicants don't have a criminal record or are otherwise not deemed a threat to our country. This means that while the migrants are not granted or denied asylum, their cases are terminated without a decision on the merits of their asylum claim. They are removed from the legal system and no longer required to check in with authorities. The move allows them to legally and indefinitely roam about the U.S. without fear of deportation, effectively letting them slip through the cracks. And the National Review is reporting almost half of independents say Trump should drop out after conviction. The poll from Morning Consult found that 15% of Republicans believe that Trump should drop out of the race now that he's been convicted on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Meanwhile, a Reuters Ipsos poll found that 25% of independent voters said they were less likely to vote for Trump after his conviction, while 18% said that they were more likely to support him. A majority of independent voters, some 56%, said that the conviction would not affect their vote either way. In the Reuters poll, 46% of voters said Trump should be sentenced to prison, while 44% of the Morning Consult poll said the same. And those are your headline news. Hey, by the way, as of right now, we're running a straw poll on our YouTube video feed today. Should Trump drop out since his conviction? 92% say no, 8% say yes. You can vote on that by going to the stationofthecross.com/ACT. You can scroll down to the live video player, and just underneath is the icon for our YouTube feed, as well as the others. Join us, hang out with us, and let your voice be heard. We'll talk more about that in the after show. Again, the stationofthecross.com/ACT. I saw an article over at crisismagazine.com enshrining abortion via IVF. And this is one of those, I guess is a pet peeve of mine when I see so-called conservatives failing to conserve things. It always gets my interest. Michael Ippolito and Nicholas Swanson, the authors of the article, join us now. Good morning to you both. Thank you for your time.
Morning, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Nicholas, let's start with you. Let's talk about IVF in general. In vitro fertilization, who knew? Who knew that in the 2024 election cycle, we'd be talking about IVF in the national debate? That seems interesting and new. Why are we talking about it now? But more importantly, what is it and why do we think it's wrong and shouldn't become sort of the law of the land?
Great. So recently, what struck Michael and I's interest about 2 weeks ago, Senators Ted Cruz and Katie Britt introduced legislation in the U.S. Senate to essentially make IVF a federal right. So this has been in the news for the last several months because in February there was a Alabama Supreme Court ruling. The case involved a couple that was somewhere in the process of doing IVF or it previously had been in the process. And the IVF clinic mistakenly discarded their frozen embryos. And so they sued the clinic, and then the Alabama Supreme Court ruled in favor of the couple and against the clinic on the grounds that these embryos had a right to life. And so this started essentially an uproar in which elected Democrats and members of the media were accusing Republicans of wanting to ban IVF. Now, in reality, there's not really an active energy amongst Republicans to ban IVF. So this is an issue where the church's position is not the popular position in either party. In fact, if you actually look at, I saw a recent poll I just checked on, I think from Pew. This is something where the percent of Catholics that are opposed to IVF is less than 10%. So this is an issue where there's a lot of misunderstanding amongst Catholics and amongst the general public. You know, why is it wrong? So Michael and I argued in our piece essentially a moral argument and a political argument. And, you know, the moral argument from the church's perspective is that, first of all, I mean, there's a sort of callousness towards human life involved in IVF procedures. So, you know, what is IVF? So this is, you have a couple that comes into a clinic, in vitro fertilization, and, you know, for whatever reason, they're not able to get pregnant through the natural process, which is obviously, you know, a great anguish. And what happens is they give the woman high-powered drugs, and they will harvest eggs, and then they will take sperm from the man, and they will essentially fertilize the eggs in a petri dish, which will create a number of embryos. So, you know, if you believe that life begins at conception, these are human beings, these embryos. Some of them will be implanted in the woman, and then some of them will be discarded, or they'll be frozen indefinitely. What does that mean, to be frozen indefinitely? It means you're typically frozen as long as someone's going to pay to keep these embryos frozen.
Wow.
So it's problematic because embryos end up getting discarded, or there's a sort of eugenics that goes behind the procedure, because what happens is that the technicians at these IVF clinics will essentially perform a visual inspection of the embryos. And so they'll pick the ones that sort of look nice, and those are the ones that will get implanted. And then the other ones, you know, their fate is not so happy. So from a more anthropological standpoint, though, IVF is essentially trying to play God. I mean, this is, you know, to be blunt about it, this is human beings trying to take total control over the process of reproduction. And it, you know, just Michael and I talked about in our piece how it distorts, you know, the meaning of sex, of the marital act. And from the church's standpoint, it's very similar to our issues with contraception, to our issues, you know, with abortion.
Michael, let's go to you. Senator Ted Cruz, he's got a reputation for being a staunch conservative. He doesn't seem to be conserving life in this regard. Why? Is this a theological issue? Is it because he's not Catholic? He doesn't have that theological nuance and understanding? You know, why would any conservative embrace IVF at all?
Well, I think that it stems from a larger problem. The conservative movement is that the conservative movement is still liberal, and the conservative movement is trying to conserve liberalism. So with someone like Ted Cruz, you know, he's got his Baptist faith, and I don't think that really is really informing his decision as like our Catholic faith would. If and it is, it's not really condemning IVF because it doesn't have that consistent view that the Catholic teaching has. So I really think that why Ted Cruz and why other Republicans are pushing forward with being pro-IVF, I think it's for two reasons. The first reason is that they're trying to save themselves politically, because if they don't come out in support of IVF, then they're going to have people on the left attack them as anti-family, as trying to once again restrict women's bodies, the same arguments they make against abortion. So they want to try to save themselves politically. But as Nicholas was saying, the same anthropology about abortion, the reasons why we're against abortion, is the same reason why we're against IVF. It's because it devalues the person, it devalues the marital act, and it devalues the family. But they don't really care about that inconsistency. They really just care about winning politically. And I think the second one is that they just have that misunderstanding about trying to save the American family and trying to be good, because unlike abortion, IVF provides a good thing, unlike abortion, which murders a child. IVF brings about a child about, but we say in our article, it does so with this very seedy way. So I think there's a false altruism involved as well. And this is just a problem in the conservative movement when it's not informed by a truly Christian understanding of the world. You get these massive contradictions, right? How can the party that's pro-life and pro-family support something that murders embryos that they don't find to be worthy? This is a really bad problem for Republicans and conservatives to have, because it's such a moral problem, and they're just going full steam ahead and supporting it. You know, former President Trump, Carrie Lake, you know, we said in our article, even Speaker Mike Johnson, they're all coming out in support of IVF, but they don't really seem to be.
Does this expose the conservative movement in this in relation to contraception? Could it be that because they also don't see any issues with contraception, therefore, by extension, how could IVF really be bad? 'Cause to your point a second ago, Michael, you said it brings about a life. This is a good thing. People want babies, and this is maybe how they get them. You know, so is contraception and their sort of widespread acceptance of it related to this? Is it a philosophical, theological mindset that allows them to rationalize these choices? I guess is my question.
I would say it's much more of the philosophical mindset. We saw in the 1920s, really, with the rise of contraception, it was a lot of these Protestant groups and sects came out in support of contraception, and the Catholic Church was the only religious group that has come out against contraception, even though there was some internal disputes about whether or not they were going to support contraception. So I do think it is the much more philosophical thing, that the conservative movement is still liberal in the fact that it values the individual as the highest being and the highest good in society. So as long as the individual is able to achieve their own goal without really worrying about harming someone else, then it's fine. So this is like the same thing with contraception. If it's just a couple and they're using it, they're not really harming people, then what is in my concern? It's that liberal anthropology that the conservative movement is still holding on to. And as much as we like to think with the changing political shift that the conservative movement is going in a much more conservative direction, it's moments like these that you have to remind yourself that the political parties in the United States are both liberal, right? You got your right liberals and the left liberals. They're both liberals. And it's going to take a massive change to get them off the track and have them articulate a conservative vision that puts forward the family, the common good in religion and Christianity.
Yeah. Nicholas, we have about 60 seconds before we go to break. Let me go back to you real quick. Can you just remind me again how seedy this actual transaction is? Because the man has to use pornography and masturbate outside of his sacramental spouse. That sounds pretty gross, but yet this is something conservatives are embracing.
Yeah, there's some, dark spots with this procedure that you will not hear in the discussions from these different politicians. And, what Michael and I think found particularly objectionable is that you have all these, pro-life, self-described pro-life politicians, and they're not only supporting this, but they're saying they're supporting it because they're pro-life. And, you look at the just sort of the way in which the procedure is carried out. You have the eugenics that, part of it that underlies it. And you have this sort of distortion of the marital act, this undervaluing of it.
We're having a conversation with Michael Ippolito and Nicholas Swanson about their article over at crisismagazine.com, Enshrining Abortion via IVF. Exactly what are conservatives conserving? They seem to not be conserving too much these days. Marriage, abortion, IVF is now one of those big issues. Contraception is another one. I want to get back to talking about Donald Trump after the break and get their take on not only the conviction, but something Michael said a minute ago. Donald Trump seems to embrace IVF. Donald Trump seems to embrace a compromise on abortion and marriage. Is he the conservative candidate? Really? Should America want more? Coming up next, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The Catholic Current, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ.
I think we have to go into prayer knowing that we're being contested for.
Oh, yes. If we didn't have guardian angels guarding us, we would be suckers and losers infallibly to immensely superior forces. The devil's terrified of prayer.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
With praise let us awake the dawn.
Start your day off right with prayer and reflection.
Have mercy on me, God, have mercy.
Join the Station of the Cross each weekday morning at 5 a.m. for the Office of Readings, Lauds, and the Holy Rosary. That's weekday mornings at 5 a.m. Eastern.
I call to God the Most High, to God who has always been my help.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network is dedicated to answering the critical need of access to quality, consistent, professional, and proven Catholic programming. We cannot rely on other media outlets to properly represent our Church. Catholic Radio reaches Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, and non-believers alike. As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent of your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported.
The Station of the Cross has many ways to keep you informed about our programming. You can view the highlights of our primetime programming schedule or the full 24/7 programming grid at both thestationofthecross.com or the free iCatholic Radio app. Just search under the Programming tab. Our website also offers a printable version for your convenience.
Be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. It's good to be on with you. Praise be to God. We're running a straw poll over on our YouTube feed. Should Donald Trump drop out after being convicted? Well, so far, 1% says yes, 91% says no, and 8% say not sure. Let your voice be heard. Go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT. You can scroll down to the live video feed there and find the link to the live video feed on YouTube where you can vote today. Share us with a friend, too. We would be incredibly grateful to you. But we're having a conversation with Michael Ippolito, who, by the way, is the co-founder and president of the American Post Liberal, and Nicholas Swanson, who is a doctoral student in economics at George Mason University. And their article, Enshrining Abortion via IVF Over Crisis, is worth the read, crisismagazine.com. We're going to put a link to it in the show notes for you. Of course, Michael and Nicholas, welcome back to the show. Thank you. Let me ask you, let's talk about Donald Trump for a moment, because the whole world is reacting to this. First time in history of an American president being convicted of a felony, although there once was a vice president who committed treason and actually had to run for his life. That's an interesting story. But nonetheless, so what do you think about the conviction of Donald Trump? Do you think he should drop out after having been convicted? Do you think he's going to go to prison? But more importantly, is he truly the conservative candidate that Catholics deserve and America should get? What do you think? Michael Ippolito, start with you.
Well, obviously, May 30th, 2024 is going to go down a date that will live in infamy. And I really don't think we should be surprised about what happened to the former president. Ever since 2015, he's been persecuted by the establishment, whether it be from the fake hoaxes about him in Russia, whether it be the first impeachment, whether it be a lot of the controversies in the 2020 election and the suppression of stories about his political opponents, the second impeachment, the raid against his Mar-a-Lago house in 2022. We shouldn't really be surprised that it's culminated in this, with this bogus trial of, pun intended, trumped up charges that they have levied against him. And I think it just goes to show, it affirms a lot about the current state of the American political system, is that it doesn't serve the American people. It serves entrenched powers who obviously don't want Donald Trump in power just because he's a disrupting force to their operation, to their liberal order, which is really just falling apart in real time. And we're witnessing that transition. And whether we like it or not, Donald Trump is this world historic figure now. And he obviously is going against people who are against Christianity, who are against Catholicism in particular. Remember, it was Biden's FBI that was spying on traditional Catholics. So he's obviously up against that. And I really do think, just given the American political situation and the American political system, that he's the best shot for change. But to the point of him being the most moral candidate, compared to his opponents, he is, but from the Catholic perspective, he's not. And that's very hard for faithful Catholics. But I do believe that it is the best shot for a better alternative, a better future, I should say, because the people that are running against the alternatives are Joe Biden, right? Devout Catholic, who's pro-abortion, pro-homosexuality. He's probably pro-IVF too. So at least with Donald Trump, you can get some actual pro-life policies. There's just a major contradiction. And then RFK Jr., who's also a Catholic and devout, or I don't know if he really practices. He doesn't really use it as like Joe Biden does, but he still supports abortion. And he's been more squishy on the social issues. So really, Donald Trump is the only candidate who could possibly fix the country. I mean, I say possibly because it's not going to get, the country's not going to be fixed by just winning another election. There is a deeper religious problem. And there's a deeper social problem. There's a deeper spiritual problem that I don't think Donald Trump can fix. I think it's going to take at least a couple generations to fix. But at least if we can get Trump elected, it's a good start. Will he go to prison? I don't know. It seems likely that he will, but who knows what will happen. I pray that nothing worse happens to him. But I think the support that we're seeing for him is a good sign. But I just worry that something else might happen. But I think that the best thing we could do is support the former president and his endeavors.
Nicholas, what about you? It seems that President Trump embraces IVF, contraception. He has a compromise on abortion that seems to be different than his first term. He definitely embraces homosexual marriage and has no intention of defending marriage between a man and a woman. I think Catholics deserve better ultimately than either of the choices that we're given, or if you want to put RFK in there, then any of those three choices. I think we deserve better and need more. What say you?
I think you're exactly right. I mean, look, President Biden's positions are not in line with the Catholic Church. I mean, I'll quote Cardinal Gregory in saying that he's a cafeteria Catholic, which I thought was quite a bold statement to hear. But when it comes to Trump, I'm not sure that the battle in the end is going to be won with Trump or even lost with Trump. I think from a broader view, we as social conservatives, as Catholics who believe in the teachings of the church on life, on marriage, we need to demand more in general from our politicians, from these people who call themselves pro-life. We need to ask that they actually make a substantive case for these issues. There was an article a couple of years ago in the Wall Street Journal by Ryan T. Anderson. Some of your listeners might be familiar. He's a Catholic social thinker. He's done a lot on gender and marriage, defending the church's views. And he said in this article that I think the title of it was "Religious Liberty is Not Enough." It's like we've gone from debating, our actual views on marriage and on life to just saying, leave us alone. And we have to do more than that. It's like, yes, should a baker be forced to bake a cake for a wedding that goes against his Christian views? Absolutely not. But we also need to make the case for our views on marriage and on life. And, two avenues I would point to is to a culture that's very secular. One is to look to the social science, because the social science backs us up in a lot of these cases. I don't think that it's normative. It's not going to tell you what you should do morally, but it bolsters our case in many situations. And then the other thing I would suggest is sort of point to the victims here. I mean, I think our side has done a good job when it comes to this issue of transgenderism, pointing to the victims, which are these children who have had these procedures done at very young ages. But when it comes to abortion, point to the unborn children, who are nameless. Point to the men and women that regret their abortions, who have repented and who are sorry, and the anguish that they've experienced. Because we have to just, whether it's Trump or it's Cruz or we have to stop just making the case of, leave us alone. We have to do better than that. And I think that's what we should demand from Trump and from others.
Michael, do you think it's possible to win over people like Ted Cruz, for instance, these so-called conservatives, or Mike Johnson, or any of them, to a moral high ground that we think that they ought to be embracing by default but aren't?
Oh, I definitely do think it is possible to win them over, because despite this massive contradiction, they do believe in God and the Christian God. They believe in Jesus, but they're just trapped in this framework, and they're also just scared politically. And as Nicholas said, we need to demand more from our politicians. Them just being cowardly is not enough. They need to articulate a Christian worldview that serves the common good and serves the American people, and most importantly, protects those who can't protect themselves.
Amen. Yeah. Dear conservatives, start conserving things, like good things, the good, the true, and the beautiful. Things that are good need to be conserved at all cost. Stop being more like the other side of the aisle. I think that's a good moral takeaway today. Hey, this conversation was wonderful. Thank you both for your time. Enshrining abortion via IVF, the article over crisismagazine.com will be in the show notes today. Michael and Nicholas, God bless you both. Thank you for hanging out with us. We're going to go into the after show. We'll see you guys in the video, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning for another round of A Catholic Take. Do us a favor, share us with a friend. We'll see you then. So what did you think of today's show? Let's discuss that right now in the after show. Your take on the after take. Comment, interact live with me and the team. All you need to do is search for one of our live video feeds on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, LinkedIn, and elsewhere. Simply search for the Station of the Cross, Joe McClain, or A Catholic Take. I'm looking forward to seeing you and interacting with you directly. It all starts right now. It's the after show.
And we're back. Welcome to the after show, everyone. Happy Monday. And I think we've got Mike Koniger back with us as well.
Hey, praise be to God. Hey, I tried to do my best Drake impersonation this morning on the live Telegram group with my Sacred Heart flag in the background. I don't think anybody caught that. Apparently, I don't look enough like Drake to sell it, but I did. I did make
wondering what was going on.
I did make the attempt. You know the whole Drake thing.
Yeah, no, I know the meme, but
yeah, that one.
Yeah, I think
I was trying.
Maybe I missed the first picture you sent. Did you send two pictures?
I didn't send it. I had 7 seconds to do it,
okay.
And then my computer was crashing. So it was 50% of the Drake meme is what I offered this morning. 50%.
50%.
It's not bad. It's half, right? That's not bad.
50% Drake, 50% McClain.
It's kind of like 50% of the country thinks Trump is amazing, and the other 50% thinks he's the evil one. So
that's just par for the course.
Good times. Hey, Janice, good morning to you. Yvonne, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Damon is here. Love to see it. By the way, Damon posted he was commenting on PC posting a video of the largest version of this flag in the world. That looks pretty large. It's pretty amazing. I wonder what my wife would say if I bought a flag like that. And then I run it up the flagpole here in the neighborhood. I wonder what they would say. Mike K is back. Good morning to you, Mike.
Hey, good morning, Joe.
You got yours up?
I put it up during the my little half-hour break. By the way, full confession, I have no clue who Drake is. None. So
you're gonna have to Google it then. I can't ruin the opportunity for you to have the experience, right?
Obviously, it's Sir Francis Drake, Mike. He was making a Sir Francis Drake meme.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you didn't say Sir
Francis. All the kids these days are huge fans of Sir Francis Drake.
I think it's some.
You can't call it some hip. They call him Drake for short,
right?
So. Yeah.
Is it a hip hop star?
Yes.
You have to Google it and find out, Mike. I don't want to ruin the experience of that first impression that you're going to get. So just go to YouTube, put in Drake, and then enjoy. And just
no, thank you.
It's kind of like when you meet somebody who's never seen the movie Deliverance. You don't want to ruin it for them. No spoilers for Deliverance, okay? No, just go and enjoy it for yourself for the first time, and we'll talk after, right?
Joe, I saw that movie when I was 20, and I've been poking my mind's eye out ever since. So, no, thank you.
Jake, have you seen Deliverance? Just asking for a friend.
Yes. Long time ago.
So, all right. No spoilers. No spoilers. Hey, Janice. Good morning, Yvonne, PC, Karen, Andy Bashaw, Paul, our friend, Becky Hansen. Good morning to y'all. Praise be to God. Thanks for being on the team today. Eileen, good morning to you. Praise be to Jesus. If you got pictures of the Sacred Heart, post them. I want to see them. I know you can't post them anywhere but the Telegram group for us today, but if you're not on the Telegram group, you can join. Just join the email list. That's how you get access. Oh, let's see. Who else is here? Trad Jack Burton, Tweed and Toe, is on the team. I'm scrolling down just to make sure I get everybody. Wow, keep scrolling. Karen, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Mimi, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I see Chesty here. Praise be to Jesus. Good morning to you, Semper Fi, brother. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. Donna, good morning to you. Miriam, Kilroy Jones, Colleen, Janice, Melanie, good morning to you. Frank Rangel, good morning. Viva Cristo Rey, my friend. Evelyn, Catherine Hickey, Colin, Paul, Helen Grace, Caleb the Mechanic, Robert, Anthony. Good morning to you, Yvonne. Praise be to Jesus. Glad you guys are here hanging out with us this morning. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any comments or questions about anything, please put them in the chat so we can get to those. I see Len Pine, Nick the Mike, Cindy K, good morning to you. Robert DeBruce, Edward Clancy's back on the team. Edward says, the great U.S. problem. There are too many broken homes. The percentage of children growing up in homes without two parents has doubled since 1968. Yep. I think it's all related, right? Divorce on demand, contraception, abortion. All of these things are related. It's almost as if there is a concerted strategy, an effort to destroy humanity. And we see the coordinated, all-out attack on the world by the devil and his minions and those that cooperate with him. Edward Clancy says, contraception precedes divorce. After 64, the divorce rate skyrocketed. Yes, sir. Jane, good morning to you. I stopped watching at the point I knew I didn't want to see. You can't unsee something until you talk about Deliverance, you mean?
Let's
Deliverance?
just say, Joe, that's not a good Catholic movie, so let's just stay away from it. It's oh man, I was the projectionist on my first ship, so I'm like this 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid showing all these movies that I probably shouldn't have even had my eyes on, and that was one of them. So it was. Yes. It was. No, thank you.
It's the kind of movie that leaves a mark, a psychological mark on the brain. If you've not watched Deliverance before, let me know. I would love to know how many of you have never seen Deliverance. That would be kind of interesting to know, by the way.
I'm just going to add that don't go out of your way to see it.
I like that meme.
Damon.
I like
Thank
that
you,
meme,
Damon.
Damon. That was great. No, Sir Francis Drake. Oh, make Sir Francis Drake great again. Yes, that's what we say.
Was he ever great to begin with, though?
Sure, why not?
I mean, he was a terrible Anglican.
and a bit of a pirate, right?
Yes,
a little bit of a pirate too.
But let's say at the very least he possessed a few of those old school pagan virtues. So
now
he went out and did things.
Greatest pirate in history, who would you say?
Real pirate, not the Dread Pirate Roberts from the movie, right?
not the. You say? Oh, hold on, wait. You're saying that wasn't a documentary film?
No, it was. So it would have to be Teach there from North Carolina. So
I was pretty sure that was a documentary film, The Princess Bride.
Well, in that case, it's definitely the Dread Pirate Roberts.
No, it's not Johnny Depp, Evelyn. Come on. Real pirates, famous. Can you name besides the... Can you name any other pirate?
Edward Teach. Edward Teach is certainly one. And
I expect a Coast Guardsman to know all of these names.
Would you classify Captain Kidd as a pirate?
Interesting.
Are we drawing distinctions between pirates and privateers?
I think you bring up a good point, Jake, because the name that I have probably wouldn't be considered a pilot unless
Tom
you're
Paul
on
Jones?
one. You're exactly.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, of course, an American pirate's going to be the best pirate.
He was a Scotsman fighting for America.
Yes.
He invaded England during the American Revolution and would go on to fight for Russia sometime after.
Who's the one from...
and by the way, to all the hippies out there, not the bass player for Led Zeppelin.
Who's the one from New Orleans? Jean Lafitte?
Jean Lafitte, who was a privateer as well
yeah.
during the War of 1812. Yeah,
He's got some interesting stories there.
Yeah. Becky Hansen says, cannot have complete control of humanity if it isn't broken and thinned out. Exactly. Yes. Yes or yes. Captain Kidd, says Paul. Henry Morgan, says Paul.
Oh, Henry Morgan.
Smokey and the Bandit, says Olga. Old age 60. Hey. Forgive me. I said old guy. That's not what I meant. Old age 60.
Is that like a land shark, land pirate?
Smokey and the Bandit. Fun story. My dad, I was telling my kids this just the other day. My dad, when I was a little boy, I probably was 4 or 5. My dad, we were living in Germany, Stuttgart, and my dad built a Smokey and the Bandit out of plywood, and then pushed me around the parking lot in it. It was just it was the best thing ever. It was just the coolest thing ever. My dad.
Are you talking about the
cool stuff?
The truck or the Trans Am?
Why would anybody make the truck?
Because that's what ships the beer. I'll take the truck full of beer over the Trans Am.
The car is the icon.
I know. I love the car. The car's amazing.
Joe, you asked a Bavarian who would take the truck. What were you thinking?
Das ist gut, no?
Of course he's going to take the beer.
Of course I want the truck full of beer.
Beer.
What else would I want?
No? Let the little bearded man or let the little mustache man drive the car. I'll take the truck every day. Oh, man.
That'd be great. What if Jerry Reed was played by just a large Bavarian? That'd be great. Instead of Jerry Reed, just got a big Bavarian driving the truck.
Eastbound and down. Oh, man, I can hear the tune in my head right now. Smokey and the Bandit. Boy. Robert Stevenson says, my pirates are the best, says Robert Louis Stevenson.
That's a classic. Oh, so Robert Louis Stevenson has a good Catholic connection, actually, because he was very struck by the story of Father Damien of Molokai. Like during his lifetime, he was traveling to Hawaii and he heard about Father Damien, and I believe he visited the colony, and he became a big public promoter and supporter of Father Damien's work and helped drive a lot more donation and charity and aid to the colony and the missionaries in Hawaii. So say a prayer for Robert Louis Stevenson's soul if you get a chance, just in case something happened there at the end, because he was very struck with that story of Father Damien.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in this part of the country, you cannot get away from Edward Teach, so he's always going to be my number one. I mean, this is the area, you know, where he came and supposedly hid his treasure. Supposedly.
Mm-hmm. Who was the arch nemesis of Captain Haddock? I forget his name. Tintin. You remember Tintin?
Yeah.
The Steven Spielberg version was phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a cool film.
That was such a good film. They did such a good job, and to have what's his name? Schmeagol play the voice of Captain Haddock. So brilliant. That guy is arguably the greatest character actor, CGI, driven character actor in the history of cinema, in my opinion. Andy, what's his last name?
Serkis.
Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
That guy is so good. But I can't remember the name of the Captain Haddock's arch nemesis.
Yeah.
His name is escaping, but he might have been the greatest pirate ever. I don't know.
The guy who wrote those stories, I know I don't say it right because he's French, and I have a genetic inability to speak French, but it's spelled Herge, Herge, if I remember right.
Herge?
I think that's the guy who wrote the Tintin series. The problem is a lot of it has not been translated into English, and they're really good stories. That's the shame of it. So, I'm such a nerd. I
never watched
them in
Deliverance. Nick the Mike, you have never watched Deliverance?
Nor
Boy, are
should
you in
Nick.
for a treat then. I recommend you go immediately and just pause this video, go rent Deliverance right now, get yourself a big cool thing of popcorn, and enjoy. You're welcome. We'll talk after.
Now you can listen.
We'll talk
you
after.
can listen to Joe. You can listen to Joe, or if you want to see another movie in which Burt Reynolds is the hero, you can watch Smokey and the Bandit. Watch Smokey and the Bandit. Trust me on this one.
Much better film. Grab yourself a 12-pack of the Coors in the stubby bottles and go watch.
and then conclude.
Gotta get 'em in the
the
stubby
movie. And then you got to conclude the movie with a little New England clam chowder, right?
Yes, exactly.
So
Good chowder, Bobby.
That's a recipe
Good
for a
chowder,
fun
Bobby.
evening.
I don't know, man. I don't know about that. That's fun. I'm not sure that was fun for certain individuals. Certain characters in that film probably didn't think it was all that fun. Just to be honest with you.
I mean, it is a film that glorifies breaking the law and disrespecting a legitimate authority. But hey, whatever.
But otherwise,
yeah. But Jackie Gleason is so good in that
He's so
movie.
good. He's so funny. He's really good in that.
Man,
He dials the
think I
southern
could-
up to 11 in that.
I don't think I could watch. I tried to watch. So you know me, I like movies, so I try to watch movies, and I try to look for the older movies now. Like I watched The Searchers with John Wayne last weekend. That was
what a
great,
good movie.
fantastic,
What a
good
good
film.
movie.
The cinematography is really, really excellent, and they didn't just use white actors with brown paint on their face for the Indians, right? So like, hey, good job. But then this weekend I tried to watch the Tom Selleck movie. I think it's called Highway to China. What was it called? I gotta look it up now. Forget the name of it. But I tried. Oh, here it is. High Road to China. This movie goes back to 1983. This is like Magnum PI, level of age and fitness for Magnum PI for Tom Selleck. But I couldn't finish watching it. I got halfway and I had to stop. Like the blasphemy, right? Like, I just can't take that. I just can't listen to you blaspheme the Lord. Sorry, I'm not going to listen to that. So I had to turn it off, and I felt bad for renting it in the first place. I kind of feel I would probably feel the same way about Smokey and the Bandit right now. Like, I don't remember the language, but
I'm sure it has bad language in it because I'm pretty sure Jackie Gleason used it. So
right, that's what you made me think about that. I'm like, I bet Jackie Gleason was like letting her rip left and right, every other word.
Well, it was rated PG in the 1970s, so it's probably a modern R.
This High Road to China film was rated on Amazon. It was rated 7+. 7? All of those blasphemies are 7? Really? No, thank you. I'm going to pass on that.
Stick
Don the
with the
Highlander
Searchers.
says, "Oh, it was bad."
Stick with the Searchers. It has a young Natalie Wood in it. It has John Wayne. I mean, what more do you want? And by the way, Joe, and I don't think I'm giving away any secrets here. That last shot in that movie where he cannot come in the house, when you start to think of the implications of that, it is so moving. John Ford, despite his blasphemy and all the other, is probably one of the greatest Catholic filmmakers ever.
John Wayne credits his conversion to John Ford basically like bullying him about not being Catholic, like especially while making The Quiet Man. Like John Ford, for all of his many faults, like basically kept bullying John Wayne about like, why aren't you Catholic? Why aren't you Catholic?
Come on,
like,
best line in a John Ford movie of all time. No playing patty fingers with the holy water.
Yes. Who are you to be playing patty fingers in the holy water? Don't you know that's a privilege for courting couples? And then only once the banns have been read.
Oh man.
The proprieties must be observed.
There's a great. So speaking of linking Tintin, Steven Spielberg, and John Ford, I haven't seen the full film of The Fabelmans or whatever it was called, but there's a great scene where David Lynch makes a cameo playing John Ford in that movie, in that Spielberg movie. and it's really funny, and it gets across the personality of John Ford, just total grumpy, grouchy old guy, and his cinematography advice to the character that's basically standing in for a young Steven Spielberg in this film. His cinematography advice is, when you're framing your shot, put the horizon either at the top or at the bottom, never in the middle. If the horizon's at the top, it's interesting. If the horizon's at the bottom, it's interesting. If it's in the middle, it's boring as, and then I can't say that word on the air, but it's so funny. And David Lynch's delivery is so good.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's good stuff.
There's a spoof of John Ford in an awful movie. I think it's called The Trouble with Angels. It was a 60s lefty Catholic movie, and Milton Berle plays John Ford in that movie with the eye patch. And basically the Mother Superior kind of whacks him on the back of the head and gets him into shape.
By the way, Lori, good morning to you. Lori says, great film, Quiet Man. My dad loved Maureen O'Hare. Yay and amen. Praise be to God. Jane Steves, good morning to you. Bringing up Cannonball. I'm sure that was probably racked full of things that would drive me nuts today, but I loved Cannonball when I was a kid. That was so good. Don Paddock, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Thank you for hanging out with us today. Rachel Jordan, good morning. Junior Barra. Diane, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Norman from Hawaii, our friend, good morning. Aloha. Daniel Hyatt, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for hanging out with us today. By the way, you reminded me, Hawaii, you mentioned a minute ago about Molokai and Father Damien. I flew over that colony in a Cessna airplane back in the 90s, which was pretty amazing, actually, to fly over the Hawaiian Islands in a tiny little plane. But I thought that was pretty cool. I wasn't Catholic at the time, and still it was. I knew about the story of Father Damien and the leper colony there, so it was pretty awesome. Don't listen to Joe. The movie is disturbed. What are you talking about, Mike? You talking about Deliverance? No. Don't. Let us not falsely, lead poor Nick the Mike astray here. He should see and experience Deliverance for the first time without any bias from us. Don't you agree? He should.
I see some guy agreed with
conclusions.
me. Some guy agreed with me with flames in that chat. So I'm not going to mention any names, Joe.
Enjoy, Nick. Enjoy. I can't wait to hear what you have to think and say afterwards.
The sad unreported statistic, to be really serious, is that's 10% of all forcible rapes in this country are what you saw in that movie, and that's disgusting. Awful. It is a reality, and when you include prison rape in the statistics, 3 times as many.
You're giving spoilers. Stop it! You're gonna ruin it for him. There's no prison involved.
I'm trying to ruin it. I am trying to ruin it for him. I am trying to go, Nick. Go watch The Quiet Man again. You'll be much happier. Trust me.
Much happier. Yeah.
Pretty much any John Ford movie.
Blaine, good morning to you. Semper Fi, Blaine. Caleb the Mechanic. You mean like Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin pretending to be priests? Ooh. You know who else I like to be movies that I think are great, especially like is it Thy Kingdom Come or The Kingdom of God, or what was that? Oh, I got to look it up now. Hold on one second.
The Crusader movie?
No. Hold on. Give me 1 second. The show is over. My brain turned off. It's like, okay, we're done. Thanks.
That means yours turned off 30 minutes after mine did.
Yeah. No. What's his name? The famous actor. Oh, my brain. Come on, brain. Come back to work.
Now, you thought I was old school earlier. The famous actor. He must mean Cary Grant, right, Jake? The famous actor.
Cary Grant?
Yes.
Cary Grant? I have watched Cary Grant films. I don't know. I don't think I could say he's the greatest actor who ever lived.
He usually plays Cary Grant in his films, and Cary Grant is hilarious and great. And yeah, he's the thing is like that. You have to assert acting can be completely inhabiting a character and totally changing yourself like Andy Serkis does, or it can be like Cary Grant. He has fantastic reactions to things, fantastic expressions, fantastic delivery of lines. He doesn't have to be, play. And this is my same opinion of John Wayne, who I think is a fantastic actor, even if most of his characters are John Wayne.
John Wayne
Again, but his delivery of lines, his facial acting, all of these things make him a great actor, and I feel the same way about Cary Grant.
Here's the thing, though, Jake, is no director, even John Ford, wasn't saying John Wayne was the greatest actor in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But Alfred Hitchcock, who has more movies on the top 1,000 list than pretty much any director not named Orson Welles or Akira Kurosawa, said that the greatest actor in Hollywood was Cary Grant. So I'm sticking.
Gregory Peck. I love watching.
But is that
Gregory
just because
Peck.
Cary Grant did whatever Alfred Hitchcock told him to do? Because Alfred Hitchcock also said that actors are cattle. So
yes, I think it's exactly what it is. But when you see North by Northwest or you see any of those movies, the guy is amazing. Yep. Whereas John Wayne, John Wayne has The Searchers. He has The Searchers where he did an amazing job. But even in The Quiet Man, he's John Wayne.
Yeah.
So.
The Shootist was really good.
Shootist.
I like this movie. I'm not dissing John Wayne. Please do not misunderstand me.
Why do you hate John Wayne? I just want to know, why do you hate him? Why do you loathe him? I mean, you have such vitriol for John Wayne.
Well, I loathe him so much that I think Stagecoach is one of the best movies he made, and I love The Quiet Man, and I think The Searchers, he should have gotten an Academy Award for that role, which he did not.
Melanie says, I don't even want to search for Deliverance to see what it's about because I don't want Google to send me anything related. Don't do it. Hey, Jane says, I found out while my father was dying that The Searchers was his favorite movie. We watched it a few times, and if we take the lives of the dying, we miss moments, for granted probably, we miss moments like that. That's awesome. So you got to watch it with your dad before he passed. That's pretty amazing. Praise be to God. Yeah, The Searchers. Very interesting. I would say I think that might have been, like, it felt very modern, The Searchers, as compared to, say, some of his earlier films. Like the style of the film and the cinematography was really good. And then, of course, like I said, a lot of the older cowboy films, Native American tribes were depicted by white guys with brown paint on. Whereas they used actual Native American people for the Searchers. So I thought that was very fascinating, very interesting. I don't know. Very good movie, The Searchers.
I think it's one of the greatest Westerns ever made, and I'm not trying to be funny. I think it's just
Gregory Peck is clearly the greatest actor ever. Gregory Peck.
No.
Clearly, I don't even think
He's high on the list,
discussing.
but I wouldn't name him
high on
best.
the list.
I like Gregory Peck, and I like that awful human being but great actor John Ford. Isn't that the name? No, the guy who played in Glenn Ford. Yes, he was a horrible human being, by the way.
Sci-Fi Mike is hilarious. Sci-Fi says, did John Wayne ever fly a spaceship? No. I rest my case.
Who has flown a spaceship?
Well, you could at least go with what's his name? The former president of the NRA. Out of my cold dead hand, Planet of the Apes guy, Charlton Heston. At least he flew a spaceship, and he was a cowboy. In fact, he played a great, good guy, bad guy role in with Gregory Peck. What was it? Was it High Country? I forgot what was the name of that one. I saw it actually about a month ago. So old cowboys do fly spaceships, just not John Wayne. Why is that?
I think if you're looking for someone who flew, it's got to be James Stewart. He was in The Spirit of St. Louis, and he was in Who Shot Liberty Valance. So I'm gonna go with him.
And he flew 24 bombing missions over Europe.
And he's
for real. Yeah.
And he was what, a lieutenant general?
Lieutenant colonel, I believe.
No.
He retired a general with the National Guard.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in the National Guard.
I think he was a lieutenant colonel during the war.
He was, but I think he retired as a general. I don't remember if it was a brigadier or a major or a lieutenant general, though. So, but yeah, I'm a big fan of Stewart, and I was thinking, who else? The most disturbing old-timey actor was Henry Fonda in, is it Once Upon a Time in the West, where he's the bad guy?
He's such a good villain in that. Like, he's always playing a hero, an upstanding, hero guy. He's such a good villain in that film. He's terrifying.
How did we get off of Donald Trump exactly?
Because this is way more
This is way more
fun.
interesting.
Do we need to bring the rabbit hole phrase back onto the mug? Because, man,
Well, you
we
took it off.
started this show talking about Don Trump, and we ended up talking about Peter Fonda. Okay. Hey, now, who knew?
Peter Fonda. Who
Or-
cares about Peter Fonda?
No, Henry Fonda.
Henry. Who did I say? Peter?
Not
Peter
the
on
hippie-
Golden Pond? No,
That's Henry Fonda.
Henry Fonda
Yeah.
on Golden Pond.
Yeah, picking blueberries.
Picking blueberries.
Peter was the hippie and Easy Rider, Joe. That's the son.
I forgot. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Good time.
it's-
Hey, should Donald Trump drop out after his conviction? 6% say yes, 86% say no, 9% say not sure. Arguably, Donald Trump has been the greatest actor. I mean, look what his roles: CEO of a company, apprentice, WWF, president. I mean, he's had a lot of roles. Arguably, he's played it better than anybody. But, you know, one of the biggest questions I've asked, and with the last few minutes, I want to get your take on this, Koeniger. In fact, I was asked to contribute to an article maybe published by The Crisis. We'll see if it is. One of the biggest questions I think out of this whole conviction thing is, why in the world would Donald Trump even go through this? Is any of this worth the trouble? I mean, he's 180 years potential prison time. He'll never see that, but that's not the point. He has lost net worth, but to the tune of potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. He's been impeached twice, investigated, raided. Think about the impact. Barron, his youngest son, got a front row seat to see the entire world lambast and eviscerate his father. What do you think that does to his psychology of a young man like that? Whether you like him or hate Donald Trump, what is the emotional and psychological impact on the family members? Why in the world does Donald Trump bother? If he had never even run for president, today, Sean Diddy Combs would still want to take pictures with the Don. Robert De Niro would still want to hang out with Donald Trump. All of the liberal left would still consider him the darling of the party. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton would still love him if he had never run for president. So why does he even bother? Is any of this worth at all? Is it his ego that he keeps going because it's so infamously huge? Or is it a true love for the country? Or is it something else? What do you say, Koeniger?
I think and you know I'm not a fan of the guy. You and I have talked privately about this. We talked on the air about this. I'm not the biggest fan of the guy. But I do think he loves his country. And I'm not being funny. I think he truly does. I mentioned on the air, I listened to his son on Rumble commentating, and his son said the night before he announced his candidacy as a Republican candidate that he was in the room with his dad and his family, and his dad said, tomorrow every one of my Democratic friends will turn their back on me. And he knew it before he announced they would all walk away from him. So I don't think he went into this blind. I don't know what it profits a man. What is he, 70? He was born on 47, right? 47, 48. What does it profit a man at his age to go into this? And to your earlier point, which I was kind of chuckling in my head when you said it, how do you make a small fortune? You start with a large fortune and you whittle away at it. Donald Trump is one of those rare men who took his inheritance that his father left him and turned it into a huge fortune. And now he's turning it into a small fortune by dabbling in politics the way he has. But you know what, Joe? Despite all my criticisms of Donald Trump, if we get two more judges like he appointed to the bench, well, at least one more like he appointed to the bench, in the end, that counts, right? That has to be one of the reasons why we like him.
Well, yes, of course it counts. I mean, yes, he's better than the alternative. I know. Yes, that's true. But at what point, at what day do we decide, you know what? We're done with the low bar stuff. It's time to take this thing up a notch or 10.
But who's in the wings? Who is in the wings?
No one. That's my point.
Rand Paul has a decent set of politics, but he's unelectable because he doesn't have the personality on the stage. Ted Cruz? No. Marco Rubio? No. Let's see. The governor, what's her name, from South Dakota? No. I mean, no. I don't see anyone out there.
But that's part of my problem is, in order to get there, we're going to have to demand better quality. So far, we're willing to live with terrible quality. We're just like, hey, good enough is good enough. We just want Pabst Blue Ribbon. you can have better, you know. You don't have to settle for Keystone Light, people.
Joe, we don't even get Pabst Blue Ribbon. We get red, white, and blue beer.
You know, it's like, at some point, you got to grow up and put the cheap stuff away and go for quality. And we're not. But so we have to demand it, right? Like, so we have to demand higher quality and a higher. But Joe, it sounds like you just want a saint for president. Yes, that's true. I do. Just like my kids and my wife want a saint for a husband and father. Just like I want a saint to be pope. Just like I want a saint to be president. Because God only lets saints into heaven. If you're not a saint, you don't get there. So if you make it through purgatory, good news is you get to be a saint. But if you don't get to purgatory, bad news is you go to hell forever. So we need to demand higher, because that's the will of God, is to demand the higher moral ground. So until we start demanding it of our politicians, we're never going to have better options. We seem to be perfectly okay when we get the country hip hop crazy culture to just accept, you know, the low bar fruit that gets thrown their way. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. We got to say no to these things and hold the ground. The opposition is happy to hold their ground on their principles. And we, however, compromise. We fall back. We just compromise. Oh, but he's better than the other side. Therefore, it's okay. We just stick with this.
Yeah, it's the lesser of two evils is still evil. I get it. But
and how exactly how does he plan? You know, I wish I could almost moderate a debate. Well, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? I mean, could you imagine being a debate moderator? You're the one enemy of everyone is the debate moderator. Like, okay, Mr. President, if you were to be elected for another 4 terms, exactly how will you hold back the deep state that so many of your followers believe was your downfall? Because it seems like the art of the deal guy walked straight nose first, blindsided into the bureaucracy and the machine that is the deep state of Washington, and got your tail handed to you for 4 years. So how do you intend to spend the next 4 years? How will you mitigate that risk? How will you manage these deep state operatives? Or will you just give another $1 billion in taxpayer money to the big pharma again?
No, he messed up. You could tell from the cabinet he appointed around him. There were some good people in that cabinet, but most of them were Washington, D.C. insiders who were working behind the scenes to destroy his presidency. He had a negotiation with North Korea to finally have a proper peace settlement, because right now it's still an armistice. It's not a peace settlement between North and South Korea. And his own cabinet undermined that agreement and celebrated it in the media, and nobody called them on it. Nobody called them on it. He would have won the Nobel Peace Prize, and that's probably why they undermined it. But Joe, as long as he's appointing the same chuckleheads that Bush appointed and that the rest of the Republicans appointed, he's not going to get rid of the deep state, because they're part of the deep state, and he doesn't get that. And it was frustrating to watch him from 2017 till 2021 fall into that trap over and over and over again. And then he ran off good men like the colonel, the Marine colonel who was Department of Defense. What's his name? Oh, my goodness.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that happens to.
I told you I shut my brain off after I was done with the first segment. Yeah. So Mathis.
Oh,
General Mathis.
Okay.
So
hey, by the way, there's a couple comments here that are a good point here. I Am Sci-Fi Mike says, even if you get a fantastic candidate, will he even get 10,000 votes? And Donald Paddock says, you can demand, but the people that left religion outnumber us. And that's the question.
That's
true. And this is not taken as a defense of Donald Trump. This is just objectively, if you come up with a fantastic Catholic candidate who checks all the Catholic boxes and checks all the general electability boxes, you know, great personality, engaging, charismatic, or whatever, if he supports Catholic ideals, do you think he'll still get even 10,000 votes? And so my question is, so what's the answer to that? You can easily use that as an argument for, well, that's why we have to compromise and elect someone who isn't fully Catholic, but whatever. And then you run into the question, well, now you're supporting someone who, you know, supports IVF or whatever. And the only way I can see that path going is then, what good is democracy? What good is a republic? What good is the people voting?
Democracy is incapable, if democracy is incapable of leading us to the good, the true, and the beautiful, ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Like, so in other words, similar to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ's comments about divorce with Moses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allowing them to divorce because of their hard heart. Now, you got to look into a little deeper into the actual layers of that onion, in the sense that why Jesus would say that. Is he endorsing it? No. In fact, he's saying, but no, in the beginning, it was not so, and it shall not be so, right? Man and woman shall cleave to each other, and they're married. That's a sacramental thing. You don't break that. But Moses allowed it for a hard heart. I feel like we're kind of there. Like, our politicians are allowing these things, like these so-called conservatives are allowing these things to find compromises so they can get other things done. Mm-hmm. But as I'll go back to what I said before, if we don't demand more, higher quality, moral high ground, we're never going to get it. We should, as a people, not allow these conservatives, these so-called conservatives, to compromise on these things. It should be a no-brainer. Like, golly gee whiz, Ted Cruz, you're not going to be a conservative? All right, well, I'm going to fire you and hire the next guy. Even if he's still compromising, you need to learn your lesson here by saying, you play with fire, now you get burned. So you lose your job, even if the other guy is not 100% either. You still need to pay the price, Ted, so you're out. Go sit down on the bench. We're going to bring the next guy in. Hope you learn your lesson next time. Like, that should still be the policy. Then the next thing is, if democracy doesn't actually lead us to actual truth, perhaps we should be monarchists again. I don't know.
Well, I'm taking the 1 Samuel chapter 8 position, and all kings are bad. 1 Samuel chapter 8. God tells the Israelites, don't do it. Let me be your king. The Israelites reject God and want a king and demand a king, and so they got a king. And we wanted a king, whether we call him the president or not is immaterial. And we got the kind of government we deserved. And someone in the chat actually just said that too, and I think it was Cindy Kay. And I think she's right. We get the government we deserve, and this is what we deserve as a nation. We turned our back on God. I have Catholics in my circle, every Sunday church-going Catholics, who say, why are the bishops talking about IVF? Shouldn't they stay out of this? Separation of church and state. And these are Sunday-going mass-going Catholics.
No, of course not. Absolutely not. The government should not be protected from the truth.
Absolutely right.
They should have to answer to it.
Yeah, I am frustrated with even Catholics who go to Mass every Sunday and get in those long communion lines saying things like this, and I'm just struggling with this. And by the way, the fact that there's millions and millions and millions of babies sitting in test tubes across this country just hurts my heart. It hurts my heart. And you know, you and I have talked about this before, Joe, but we get these guys, and by the way, I do agree Trump is better than the alternative, but to your point, is that what we really want? Is that
good enough? No. Is that going to get us where we got to go? No, it won't. We're not going to see a holier nation with good enough. That's the problem. We're not going to see a holier nation when our moral bar is lowered so far that anybody and everybody, in spite of their mortal sins, rationalized, can pass that test, right? Like, we need to raise the bar and then raise humanity up to the bar. That's the real goal here, but we're not accomplishing that. We're kind of moving in the opposite direction. By the way, you know what else is really tragic and sad is that Eric JMJ likes Heineken. I mean, isn't that the skunky beer? I mean, like, should friends let friends drink Heineken? I'm not so sure.
The Dutch shouldn't. They should buy their beer from Germany, like all good people in Europe. I'm not going to go.
Like all good citizens of planet Earth. Edwin says, Joe, I still like Pabst Blue Ribbon. You're just being a frugal franny there, Edwin. It's at our vintage.
Or is that the voice? Is that the voice of the people speaking? The people prefer the bland beer.
Yes. Budweiser and PBR, right? Budweiser and PBR. But
good grief. Hey, by the way, Lil Daisy says, good morning to you, Lil Daisy says, fast from beer and offer it up asking for a better candidate. I like that. That's well said. Yes. I'm on that team.
I can do that. I can do that because I can't drink beer because I have celiac.
That's right.
So.
That's
not fasting.
I can't actually drink beer. That's the catch. I'm not.
No, you can offer up your inability to drink. That's like,
so I went to this
Sacrifice.
German restaurant in Washington D.C. and it was a true German restaurant because I come in, they see my last name, they know I'm German, and the waiter says, "What kind of beer would you like?" And I said, "I can't drink beer. I have celiac disease." He said, "You're not German."
Yikes! Yikes! Give me your German card right now. We're tearing it up.
You're not getting it. So, oh man. It's
what about Guinness Stout on tap? Says Edward Clancy. You know, before I got married to my lovely bride of going on 24
Guinness.
years now, fantastic marriage. Don't fact check me on that. Just take my word for it. But I knew that my coworkers were going to throw like a bachelor thing, and I was a little concerned about what they would choose to do. And so to mitigate the risk and not to ruin my marriage before it even started, I insisted that the thing that I wanted to do was go and drink Guinness at the bar, which is what we did. We sat at a bar, we drank Guinness, we had a great convo, and then we went home. And I loved it. Praise be to God. So I love Guinness. I could drink a Guinness. It's like a meal in a cup. Well, before there were Smoothie Kings, there was Guinness. But I can't drink it because it's got all that grain and gluten in there, and that would cause lots of inflammation issues, and I can't do that anymore. So we're done with that.
Murphy's Irish Stout is also worth searching out if you like dark beer. I like it, and of course I like those Russian Imperial Stouts. So, but I can't drink any of them. By the way, before we go completely off the air and we're done, I do want to say if Emperor Karl were running for president, I'd be voting for him for sure. I want Emperor Karl.
Is he really an emperor? Can he really be an emperor if the people are voting for him and not the 7 electors?
I would elect him to be emperor.
Exactly.
So, and you know how much I dislike the whole thought of monarchy, Jake. But
Yes,
for Emperor Karl, I will take every time.
Now,
I will take Emperor Karl.
I am considering running for Holy Roman Emperor. I'm weighing the decision. We're discerning it as a family, and I may soon release my platform, and hopefully I'll be running, and then of course elected as Holy Roman Emperor. So, and of course,
sorry, Joe, you have the wrong genetic makeup.
What?
But didn't you interview?
I
guy?
identify as an Austrian.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We don't work that way. We don't work that way. Sorry, we don't work that way.
I self-identify as a Habsburg. I even have the nose, or at least
your people may be from the Highlands. Your people may be from the Highlands, but not the right Highlands. Sorry.
The thing is, it's easy for anyone to say, "Oh, well, I would accept a king if he was a saint," but I would accept a king if he was a horrible fallen sinner who was not a good man at all.
But
I
you're
would
just a monarchist,
accept exactly because I believe that the system is in principle superior. I legitimately do. So I don't even care if I care if he's a saint, but I'd vote to have a king even if the king was not a great guy.
Speaking of inferior, Bush beer is inferior, Rob. I agree with you. And Janice, IPA, really? IPA? Come on. Friends don't let friends drink IPAs. I'm just being honest. Just putting it out there.
So the many years ago, Consumer Reports did a taste test of beer, and I'll bring up a brand that you have not mentioned, Joe. And the winning, this was back in the day of corporate beer. There was no microbrewery. There weren't these little guys out there making whatever. And it had Coors. It had all those and Busch and all those brews. But the winning beer, according to Consumer Reports, was Stroh's. S-T-R-O-H-S.
Oh, really?
Yes. It won. It won. So
nice.
And I drank a lot of Stroh's in the days when you couldn't get a good beer. So it was. Oh, we used to think Heineken was good beer, and people don't know that. So
we used
there
to
you
think
go.
back in the day when we used to think Heineken was good beer. It smells. I don't like Heineken because it smells.
It's skunky. It's skunky.
It's skunky. It's what beer commercial really emphasized that? I forget. Was it Sam Adams that used to talk about the skunky beer? I can't remember now. It's been so long.
Well, you figure I watch television, and my mom, God bless my mother, thought television. She said they called it programming for a reason, so she put the television out on the curb, and the garbage man picked it up. So praise Mom, right? So.
Yeah, amen. Well, we canceled cable television well more than a decade ago. But hey, we are out of time. Mike K, thanks for the fun chat. Weighing in here, praise be to God. By the way, the straw poll, 8% say yes, 83% say no, and 9% say not sure whether Donald Trump should drop out of the election now that he has been convicted. We'll see. I think it's only going to help Donald Trump get elected, if you ask me. If he were to be in a jumpsuit in jail, he'd probably get even more votes than he ever got before.
Probably.
So we'll see how it all ends up. Tomorrow on the show, Ross McKnight is back. It is June. It is the pride of the Sacred Heart. Praise be to God. Ross McKnight is going to be on the team tomorrow. We'll see you there. God bless you. God love you. Have a good day.